Good morning and welcome to the Beef and Barnzy show. As it's been overrun. It's Barnzy and the Brits. So,
he's got to pay his rent somehow.
Well, there you go. There you go. Coming to you live from Hammond, Indiana, and Pflugerville, Texas.
Yeah.
So we all bowled last weekend in Lubbock, and we brought along the only person that scared the TV show. Although you guys both bowled better than I did. So,
well, I was third with 2 games to go.
Well, I missed that part.
Yeah,
good run.
I'd like to say that I got 2 bad pairs, but but I don't think that's really necessarily the case. I got 2 bad pairs for me. So yeah, I shot 2-0 against Simo, and we basically were level going into the 10th frame, and I 4-pinned and he struck out because that's what he does. So I lost that one 2-0 to 220, and then the last game, the position round, me and Nick Pate, something about a monkey and a football, the 2 of us, and it ended up 190 to 180. So I dropped like a brick. So I went from 8th to 12th. What about your week, Dom?
Yeah, I mean, just finishing off there, I think looking at the scores, the games before the pairs were going to go on for position round, the scores were quite good. And then they sat for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it was. There weren't any really good scores after they sat for that long. I think I followed Darren Tang bowling 240. And then I had, I couldn't go far enough left to find hold. And then I was using urethane hold to the right, which wasn't really the right thing, but it managed to scrape out a high 190, I think, to win that match. But, the scores sort of dropped 50 pins on some pairs. And then some pairs, Barn, you know this place better than most. Some pairs just start off tight, stay really tight, and then that creates hold at the end. And I think a couple of pairs were pretty good at the end.
Yeah. That, and you had a fair amount of urethane going down the front end of that last round. I'm not sure how much was there by the end, as I was in the air by then, but it didn't seem to be nearly as much.
I think the one thing it really did do, the urethane, was it really made the high end good for longer.
Okay.
Because usually the high end is like, it's kind of death, really. You want all your games at the lower end. And it kind of balanced the bowling center a little bit, because Darren Tang shot 299. I believe that was game 6 on 30. What was the last pair we were using? 33 and 34, I think. Yeah, on the high end anyway. And that just isn't like kind of normal in Lubbock. Like late on, the scores aren't really coming from that part of the bowling center. And then Dino had 2 really good games late on. I think he had a 270, a 274 or something, really odd number, but he had like a 270 and a 250. So yeah, it was cool. The game 6 was one of the wildest games I think I've ever seen. In terms of the scores, just completely flipping around. It was insane. Like, I mean, Darren Tang went from, I think, 14th to 6th in one game, or 14th to 4th, because he shot 299. Dino moved up a bunch. I went from like 8th to 3rd, back down to 12th. So yeah, it was really close. It was, like I say, Maldonado was the class of the field, and then basically there was maybe 2 or 3 guys at the bottom of the round robin who didn't really seem like they were in it. But then the middle 10 guys were basically playing for those 3 spots. And Jake Peters was definitely, me and Don were actually talking about it. Even though we were bowling against Jake, we were still,
it's a great story.
Getting to the point where we were almost rooting for him shooting that 270 the last game.
Yeah, that's there's a guy that deserves something good to happen to him. That's, he's the guy. So yeah, it was tough. Linda was giving me updates on the stepladder as it gone through, and it sounded like he was in control, and then all of a sudden he wasn't. It just kind of flipped upside down.
Yeah, he had the front 4, and then he got none. So that wasn't, I guess.
Yeah.
Chris is just, yeah. Okay. Chris is on a hotel Wi-Fi in Indiana, so if you see him with his mouth, that'll be why it is. Brian asked a great question here. This is funny. I could give you the definite answer right straight away. What made people use urethane in match play? Michael Tang.
Yes.
That's the only reason. Michael Tang was 114 over, qualified last, and with 2 frames to go in the 6-game block, he was first. So people said, give me a piece of that.
Yeah.
So that's why a bunch of the urethane came out. They are local. Cody says Michael Tang went 300 over in the Cashers round. Yes, that was 100% the reason why it happened. Did you have any success with urethane, really, though?
No, and I was determined not to use it, apart from when I went 2-0, and then I was trying to save a 170 game. I looked at Tommy Jones, and he said, well, he probably should throw it. And I threw it to finish that game. He had a double to save, for 170 down the low end. Following Maldonado, who tried to use it as well, which he hadn't used the whole time, and he shot 170 on that pair. So, after that, no, I took a bigger ball out with a bit of surface, a really strong cover, and sort of blended it, kind of like urethane, but just with a reactive ball, because it was such a strong cover with, probably around 1,000 on it.
So what ball did you use?
So that was a Command. That was the new Command Solid that was drilled a little bit stronger than I normally drill it, like 4 3/4. Pin goes underneath the middle finger for me. But most of the time I used the Hammer Obsession. That core is just a little bit, it stores a little bit more for a big ball. So actually I don't have that ball as big as a Command. I have it underneath that. So I make it really versatile. And true to form, I have 2 to 3 or 4 of those in my bag. So I kind of, depending if I'm following urethane, I'd use one that was a little bit stronger and had more a slightly earlier hook to it, whether that would be the surface being duller or the drill pattern or both. And then some of the lanes that are really tight that had lots of friction, then I'd use a different one. It would be like a weaker pin, obviously shiny, and sort of depending on what pair we want at what time is which one I'd use.
Yeah, I do think that's a good question. If any of you guys have questions about Brunswick balls, Dom's here. He can answer any of those questions. But be fair, they did release 25, so he might not know exactly all of the new ones, but he probably has a pretty good grasp on them, certainly better than me and Chris do. So if you have any questions about those, go ahead. For you, when you use multiple balls, do you find that in like one particular bowling center or whatever, like one ball's working, you like to add a couple of those, or is it just a feel thing?
It's sort of if one ball's working in a bowling center, I'd say it's more of a feel thing. And, I'm known to change balls a lot, but the last thing I actually want to do is change balls. So I have to be quite confident in that ball change before I do it. I'd much rather have a little tinker of a different drill pattern with the same ball. So it's really close and I don't have to do that much. I can just throw it how I want to throw it, or keep the speed how I want to keep the speed, so I can make good shots. And that always isn't, when I have a 20 ball arsenal, that's not always going to be a ball change. Sometimes it can just be a drill pattern change, a surface change. Obviously we can't do that mid block, so I have to have it there ready. But I do like my favorite balls and I like to have multiple of them. So it just makes bowling easier for me.
Yeah. Rick Benoit says hello.
Hi, Rick. There he is, Sensei.
Yeah. We have this debate a lot back and forth over like whether you like having multiple of the same ball or like having, basically the same layout laid across. And I think it's a little easier for us on the Storm side because the covers are a little more established and we kind of know. So it's a little easier for us to have like one, like R2S, for example, you could have 3 balls with the same layout, but the core's different. It's a little easier, I think, on our side.
Yeah, and like you said before, I've got a lot of choices. So I do like to have the same drill pattern on each bowling ball. So I can go from, if I'm changing from a 5 1/4 inch pin with a 30-degree VAL angle, I've kind of got that over my whole bag. And then once I find the ball that really tunes into what I'm trying to use, if I go and follow a pair of urethane, that might not always be a ball change or a new bowling ball change, at least. That could just be a drill pattern change. And
okay.
And then that just helps me with keeping myself within myself. I think that's the biggest thing for me the last couple of years I've learned is try to stay within myself and not try to match a two-hander's rev rate or try to throw it overly slow and get caught up in that a little bit. It's just nicer to find the right bowling ball.
Jason says, Dom, have you compared the new web pearl to the black silver web pearls from a couple of years ago? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought the Hopkinsville web curl, the black and silver one, that was quite quick and it got quite forward. Whereas I'd say this new web pearl, the green one that Maldonado just used, is a lot rounder. So that takes us back to the original web, like the blue and black one. Yeah. It's got the same core. I think out of Brunswick, they just sort of made that cover a little bit stronger than what that the original web was. I can't remember if that was a solid or a hybrid. I want to say it might have been a hybrid. Mm-hmm. So that blue one, it compares more to that than the web pearl, the black and silver. But I'd say it's definitely stronger. They beefed up the cover stock a little bit more. It hooks more in oil. Maldonado is lofting it.
Yeah, the whole time. Maldonado was it was funny because I was talking to Chris Sloan and I was trying to help him a little bit in his game. And I said to Chris, he was bowling fifth arrow, and I go, "You're significantly too far right." And Chris just looked at me like, "What?" And I go, Game 4, Maldonado was already throwing it halfway down the lane. Like,
it's been a while since I've seen somebody loft 30 feet as well.
Yeah, Maldonado was throwing that thing down there. And the thing that was amazing about it was nobody else was really doing that.
No, and
he was leading. It was so weird.
He looks in control doing it.
Oh, yeah. No, he knew exactly where he was going. I think that sometimes with Maldonado, though, it's a little hard to loft it the way he does. Because of his skip, it really allows him to shove it to the right. And for us, like, I don't know, for me, I've got to be really, like, solid at the foul line to be able to loft it consistently. But because he's so used to, like, kind of jumping a bit to the right, I feel like because we've bowled some local tournaments when he's been doing it, and it's actually quite difficult to loft it the way he lofts it because it just naturally pushes to the right so much.
So we should jump as we let go and see if it helps.
I mean, well, we should have done in Lubbock. Dal says, if you continue to leave flat tens, what do you adjust? It really depends, Dal. The first thing that we would adjust, I think all of us, would be a hand move. But it really, I mean, it's a bit like how long's a piece of string, because there's so many variables of why you leave a flat 10. Are you leaving a flat 10 because the ball's burning up, or are you leaving a flat 10 because it's never really picking up?
And yeah, there's like 100 answers. And I think for us where we are, it's not the first flat 10 we try to do a big move off of. We might move our feet one, change speed, change hands. It's kind of like the third or fourth flat 10 because we don't try and throw the same shot after a flat 10. So once it's happened a few times, then it's going to be something more drastic, like a ball.
Love Jones says, "Are you only here as the moderator, Chris?" Seems that way. So
about the finals, and I wasn't part of that, so
yeah. So what did you? So we'll just quickly go around. So you basically use the Obsession the majority of the time this week. I used a combination of really big balls. I used the Reality Shiny. I used the Proton Physics Shiny. I get only a little bit of play out of my X1 Shiny. And then the ball that I went to when I needed something because the carry down was the Dark Code. They were basically the four balls I used. And then, of course, my trusty Squad RG. What did you go through, Chris?
I went through a bunch of different options early. I went with Realities early, and then I went to Zen, which was too quick for me. I got to the same spot you got to, basically, is the bigger balls, and then having less surface on them, either polish or smooth, ended up being the better option for me. I got in the 30s on game 7 and 8 with the Shiny Reality. I got 75 over, which was made up a lot of things on the field for me down there to make the cut, get in position, but I could never get anything going. Shot 240 the first game through on an IQ Tour in the Cashers round, a really strong one. I followed Tang, and the carry down actually helped me a little bit, but the round of traffic to the right in the front, and that was a trickier pair. 17-18 is not one of the better players in there. And I just moved off of it. And looking back, that was my mistake, is I've had some luck staying to the right when there's that slot there. And I just didn't stay there. I moved into 20 and, 210, 210, 210, and just a lot of okay games. But, I needed another hit in the middle of almost every game to get enough to start, get away from being 16th or 17th through 21st and get up into the cut number. And so,
yeah, and the cut number was very odd on Sunday as well. Like it didn't really move, and then like game 5, the cut number went up 50 pins. Or say 30. It went up 30 pins, and I shot 150 in that to be the number. So if I'd have just shot 180, the cut would have gone up 50 pins in one game. It was insane.
Yeah, it went up 35 the first game. Then it went up like 15, and then another 10 or 12. And then the next game I shot 210 and made up 15 pins. It went down 5, and then it went up 30, and then it went up another 20 the last game, which is probably more what it should have been the whole time, was give or take 20. But it was very odd, depending on which part of the building you were at because we were all together and the top of the field was low. When they got in those first pairs in the 30s, the scores went.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tell me about it. Buck 50, 278 back to back last 2 games.
Hey, before we get too far, one of our sponsors has a tournament coming up, and we want to get to that and tell you a little bit about it. Stu has the flyer, and there it is.
Robert Eddy down at Lightning Strikes has his monthly tournament. This month it is the $2,500 version. 28th of August. I mean, smoking deal, $125 to bowl for $2,500. The September version of this tournament will pay $5,000. He runs one a month, and basically once a quarter it's $5,000. So I believe it's like 1,000, 2,500, 5,000 back to back months. So even the one that pays 1,000 still a great deal. If you're down there, me and Chris can definitely recommend Seed to Table if you want to go and get some breakfast. They had the most pastries, fruits, muffins, the fancy coffee bar, the works. And to be honest, I think Chris was very pleasantly surprised when they told him how much his coffee was, because he was getting a little worried that it was going to. I think Chris was having a little bit of a sweat when he saw how fancy the coffee bar was. But it was cool. We definitely enjoyed our time down there.
Yeah, if you've ever been to a Whole Foods, it's on steroids. It was a pretty amazing place. Can't wait to get back down to the area. This tournament is a really good deal, and the September one is fantastic. You won't find one like that hardly anywhere. So thanks to our sponsor and our friend Robert Eddy at Lightning Strikes in Fort Myers.
Check it out.
For sure.
Yeah. So where were we, Christopher?
We were talking about finals, what worked and what didn't work. And then in the finals, of course, you're a thing. And everybody missed. It seemed like in match play, there's not everybody, but 8 out of the 12 probably threw it down the lane. You were a victim, Stu. That was one of the games I got to watch before I left. Nick Pate shoots 260, and you bowled 230 with 2 9-pins.
Yeah. I mean, I did in the second frame completely flag the head pin and get the 4-2-1 hit. So that was a nice 3-bagger to start the game. But yeah, I mean, Nick bowled a really good game. Nick started out like a house on fire. He shot 260, and then I believe the next game he shot 298 or 289, something like that. So it definitely he definitely enjoyed that on the fresh. I mean, I feel like Nick Pate's one of those guys that one tournament we're going to bowl, he's going to lead by like 300, because it just seems like when he strikes,
he roll, yeah.
It's just, and he's another guy who can absolutely hook the shit out of it. I mean, it's not like his rev rate. I mean, it's not low, but it's not like his rev rate's like EJ's. But holy shit, he can make the ball hook.
Mm-hmm.
It's sneaky how much he can hook it.
And you guys couldn't see it, but it was up at Flow Bowling. I really couldn't see it, but lots of times if there's issues, the Wi-Fi in the center has a lot to do with, if that's what you're talking about, actually. how quick it was or not. It gets tricky that way.
Somebody just asked, Martin says, good to see PBA back again. Guys, who are your partners for the Lucy next week?
I have Dasha Kovalova as my partner. So
Queen's champion.
Yes,
I practiced with her. I practiced with her when I was at Brunswick last week, and I said, I'm going to prepare you for bonding with Chris. So I broke a bag, ripped the shirt, and punched the wall. And she goes, oh, this is what I have to look forward to.
Yeah, just because you have a cute accent doesn't mean you're not still a douche. So.
Dom, who are you born with?
Diana Zavalova. She's been on vacation for the last 6 weeks, so hopefully she goes and practices sometime. I'm not just mean to you, Chris. Don't worry.
And then I'm bowling with Birgit Norakes.
As long as she's allowed in the country. She's not here yet.
No, she's not here yet.
But
I'm anticipating that it'll be okay. Well, thanks, Dusty. That was nice of you. He was talking about when the flyer was up, it just covered my face.
Zen Master looks more rolly, or is it just the layout? It was a little bit of both. The low pin was definitely rolly, but the cover itself it's going to be more rolly than the actual Zen. It has more surface that goes along with it, but it's more rolly. Stu he smoothed his up a little bit, put a touch of polish on it, and it got much more responsive. So it looks like it has the flexibility to do a couple of different things there.
Yeah, if any of you guys missed the product show last week, I've put the Zen Master video up on our YouTube channel. It's going quite well, so share it along. We'd appreciate it. Here's somebody who's bowled a couple of doubles tournaments with you. She says, that's my pick for the win. I'll say it now. Sorry, Dasher. He's actually kind of funny. So, I mean, Alan Riley says, I see Barnes has been taking a page from Dino's partner picking strategy. Dino is a phenomenal recruiter.
He's pretty good at it.
Yeah. This is an interesting question. Chris and Stu, who would you have on your Olympic bowling team if you were the team captain, not actively bowling? It depends how many people we're having. If it's two, I don't have exactly a lot to choose from, do I? What would it be? Dom and Teese, if I'm not bowling.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, my team would be a little, would have a lot more dynamics to it right now. But it would be awfully hard. Kyle's been the best bowler this year. And Simo is probably the most versatile.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Vi would certainly give him a run for his money at the minute. He's been bowling pretty well.
Been bowling great, and Doherty's been bowling well. But
yeah, I did say to Chris Vi that I was going to start a post on the USBC message boards, and I was going to say, no freaking way that guy bowled on the same thing I bowled on at Nationals. I bowled against him this week, and I beat the shit out of him. There's no way he beat me by 400 at Nationals. They put down a special pattern for the house to bowl that last squad. And Vi was like dying laughing. He goes, oh, please do it. Because we were just laughing about how many people would be like, yeah, it's bullshit. The USBC just oil the lanes for the pros.
You won't.
No, I know I won't. But can you imagine the text message? Can you imagine the text message I get from our fearless leader, Murphy? Being like, really? Really? That's where we're going with it? Really?
Yeah, #1squad.
Yeah. Belmont wants the Open Championships to be one squad. It's funny you should bring that up actually, because we were talking about that a little bit. That happens in the British Open, or the Open Golf all the time. Like, one day the wind blows and you're out when the wind's blowing, and you weren't out when the wind's blowing. Well, you got a huge advantage. Like, I understand, and I understand it's frustrating and everything else, but the one thing that was slightly better was the fact that we had a longer cashes round this time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, realistically, I don't think there's a solution to it, because we can't just bowl one squad tournaments everywhere for every tournament and have what would you have, 10 on a pair? bowl 5-man team pace.
Yeah. I mean, and the overall numbers weren't crazy for all we've had way worse A to B squad tournaments in that place.
What I was about to say was it wasn't crazy for the total 40. It was a little crazy at the top because it was one out the top 13.
Top 16 wasn't great, I don't think, when they said that. But
4 or 5 went in, and then it evened up a little bit the next day. But and that's why you want longer cashers round, and that's why bonus pins have been around forever. Is originally you don't without the cashers round, but you have the bonus pins help make up the difference of when you're all bowling at the same time. If you're the one that's bowling better, your score gets weighted, and that's why it's around.
With all due respect to the tournaments we're bowling the summer swing and love to have the events to play, they're not our majors, and I think they do the majors right, the one squad thing, limited fields, and they open the fields up for these ones. And I think it's just one of those things we have to deal with, and hopefully if you don't get it good one week, you get it good the following week, and you kind of move on. If it was, the $250,000 or $100,000 event and our majors, and it happened week in, week out, like it kind of used to, then I think they've come up with a good solution. But for trying to get a 3-day event in, basically Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then there's not a lot we can do about it. But it wasn't. I've definitely seen worse than last week.
Right. Short of making it a 3-day event where you have, like Hammond here for the seniors, we bowl A, B, and then BA. And here they don't run them in between. We don't probably put enough oil in the lane for that to happen on the regular tour.
He almost said on our tour. Oh, I've broke him. So definitely we've got to definitely what you said about the majors, and that's an issue. One thing I'd like to see though is I'd like to see it where it's a little less likely that in the same places when we're bowling year on year that you don't bowl like A squad every single time in the same bowling centers. That's the only slight issue.
And I suppose once we get back to the majors, typically if you bowl, or not the majors, but these events used to be the majors. If you bowl A one week, then you bowl B the next, but you always are on the same squad with the same people, and then that kind of can get old sometimes. So that's why one squad's always going to be better. But if you can't fit it in, you can't fit it in. There's always going to be a price to pay for having one squad, and that would be less bowlers and
less prize money.
Less prize money, yeah.
I mean, the other thing that I did think though this week that saved it a little bit, but maybe why the scores weren't as high on your squad, was your squad had way less rev rate. And historically in in Lubbock, having less rev rate on the squad has actually been quite good. But I just think that that kind of weighed out with the AB situation. Like
that and a lot of the left-handers, the local regional entry left-handers were on that squad. It was like 11-3 left-handers, so less breakdown, less traffic, which normally is an advantage. It didn't seem to be this time, so I don't know.
Somebody says, what is left of the chalkboard? And my wife answers for them. It's a clock that says the time in words versus numbers. So
really quickly, and this one, the Zen will be released, and Love Jones is on it, August 27th. So I guess I am no longer needed on this show. We can move along.
Love Jones says, to be fair, Stu, Dom and Teese would probably be the best option if you could just bowl. If you could bowl. History would say that that's not correct. This season would suggest that's not correct. But if you need a refresher course on how that works out, check out the 2018 step ladder when I actually won. I slapped little Richie around a little bit. So
she is the theme song. One moment in time. There's a moment in time maybe where Richie was ahead of you.
Yeah, Scorpion at the World Series.
But I don't. There are not many of them. So to be fair.
To be fair. Yes, that's my plan at the moment. But we will see how everything transpires about playing the New Mexico Open.
Yeah, I don't know about that yet. So
Danny says, you played. Thanks, Danny. He said, we played well and well. Noticed a few round robin played with urethane. Yeah, we covered that a little earlier. Michael Tang created it. Adam says 2018, talk about ancient history. How about last week? It's hard for me to beat Richie if he's sat at the back.
And we won't talk about the year before when he switched brands and basically didn't make any guts. So,
how far did the two of you grow up from each other? Are you talking about me and Chris? No, me and Don basically live in almost as far apart in England as you could live without living somewhere absolutely ridiculous. I live in the northwest, and Dom lives in the southeast. Would you say that? Yeah. So yeah.
It was like
250 miles.
Yeah, it was a decent way. I've done it a couple of times.
We have some states that are only that big.
Yeah, I was about to say, we drove 370 miles over to Lubbock this weekend, and trust me, the 250 miles from my house to Dom's house is much more traumatizing than that 370-mile drive to Lubbock. Del says, when I saw Peter's gutter ball, I went straight to Del Ballard. Well, I'm sure you weren't on your own.
Yeah, that was tough. You just knew he got far enough ahead to think about what was about to happen.
I'm going to get this one right. Martin says, who do you think will win their first title? Tang, Pate, Miller, or Sherman? Sherman, because he already got there, even though he only got half.
He's got half of one. Yeah. It's going to be tough for him to get a second one right now, it appears. Had some issues and
yeah, he's got a torn labrum, I think, in his shoulder. So that I think they said that he's had procedures on it and he was starting to bowl, and I think he's going to bowl this weekend. So we'll see how that goes. It doesn't sound like something I'd want to try and bowl with. I mean, I think the obvious answer here is probably Darren. Darren's definitely been the closest, I would say, in a singles tournament of those guys. But I don't know. I just feel like there's going to be one tournament where everything lines up for Nick Pate and he's just going to strike like a maniac and just nobody's going to be able to catch him. It's just whether he can win the stepladder game, I think.
Yeah, I think if with Sherman healthy, I think it's Darren, Kyle, Nick, Michael, Brad.
Okay. Top rope.
Yeah. He says, is Belmore bowling yet? If not, will he ever get out of Australia with the new COVID rules in place? I'm sure Belmore will find a way to get out of Australia next year when we're playing for six-figure checks. It's amazing how six-figure checks makes things a lot easier.
Yeah.
But like, I know that Sam's having a lot of trouble in figuring out how he's going to get home and how much it's going to cost him. He's won more money than basically his entire career this year. And now he's afraid that he's going to lose 10% of it trying to get home. It kind of sucks. The flights are really expensive because Australia are limited how many people can come home at once. And yeah.
I think this last 18 months, it's hard to judge anybody for competing or not competing. And it's just difficult times at the moment. And hopefully come start of 2022, I can say that already, 2022. And then, yeah, maybe things will be back to normal. We'll be able to fly and quarantine won't be such an issue and stuff like that.
Right.
Fingers crossed.
Carl Buckley says, do you think AJ Johnson will win an event soon, or will his anger get in the way?
Go ahead, Barney.
I don't think it's his anger that's the problem. It's anxiety that's the problem, if there is one. You know, like it is for a lot of people before they win. So
I also think that it's really difficult to win on the PBA tour.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that it's like, they talk about it in the golf as well. It's like, you know, there's like Tony Finau. I think he's won one time. He's a great golfer. Like, there's guys who are in the top 10 who just never win. And it's kind of the same with the PBA tour, especially with it's really hard for one-handers to win. Like, it just, and all of these guys we're talking about are non-lefty one-handers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and qualify because it ties into this. No, Brad is last. I said the way to win, like Brad might make 4 more shows, but Michael and Nick are way more unique. And to win, lots of times you have to be somewhat unique. And Brad's middle of the road in a lot of things and does a lot of things above average. And he's made a ton of finals over the last 3 years, but it's hard to separate because he's in the middle.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%.
And so,
and if you think about the guys who are winning their first titles this year, there's been a few of them. Vi, 2-hander, huge rev rate. Sam Cooley, 1-hander, huge rev rate. Maldonado, 2-hander. Like, there's to be Frankie and bowl like Frankie and win is really fucking hard. Like, really hard. And it's not to take away from the other guys. It's just that's the separator right now.
Mm-hmm.
Cliff
referencing Jason coming back and forth. Trip home would cost as much as the night at the casino with couch.
Martin says, will the PBA League be back in 2022? I believe that's the plan.
That is, I heard definitively yesterday, that is the plan. So
Dell coming off the top rope, he says, I don't think AJ will win a title over the next 2 years. Well, Lucy might be his best prayer, is his best shot, because he's got a person he likes bowling with. And Aaron McCarthy is on fire this season. She's bowling fantastic. So AJ might tell you to stick it in your pipe in 5 days' time.
Have a small update. Tim Mack is in 6th right now.
Sorry, we just lost you. Tim Mack is what?
He's in 6th right now. So.
Oh, okay. Let's go.
Making a little move. Yeah.
How is Duke getting on?
Just fine. He's in 2nd now, 100 over. So he shot 2-0 the first game, and now he's 703.
We should refer to him as friend of the program. Norm Duke.
Friend of the program. Pete is only in 11th right now, but he'll bomb him on the 2nd squad, I would imagine, when he can go stand on his arrow and throw it over that way.
Rick, I've not been worried about that question recently. My coming out of the World Series, it was actually when will Stu make his next cut was what I was more worried about.
Attainable goals, huh?
Yeah, but I'm on a hot streak now, Chris. I've got 2 top 12 finishes in my last 3 events on the PBA Tour. Let's go.
Sure.
Hot streak. This is a question for all 3 of you. What did you do when you won your first show? I went and got a shower and came back and watched Dom win his.
All right.
Because it was about 3 hours later. It's because he won't let me have nice things. I had a chance to be on the cover of the Bowler's Journal when I won in Owasso. So Dom won the next week at the US Open and said, no. Not allowed nice things, Chris.
Don, what did you get? What did you do after your first title?
We're in South Point.
We went to that. We went to the steak place, and Bill Chrisman bought the meal, and he kept saying, "Buy as many beers as you want," because Bill was probably the drunkest of everybody because he sat there and watched Storm win 4 times in a row. So he was very happy with us, and it was all the foreign guys. I think I won, right. Belmo won, and Dom won, all in the same day. I actually think Belmo. Yeah, we basically won 3 times that day, and he won the previous day with a different foreign guy. And yeah, it was a pretty nice week that week. It was all Storm non-American players winning. I think Andres won.
I think that was just after the TSC was a lot of money, the 250 grand. That might have been 2011 as well. Mm-hmm. So it was a big deal to try and get into the TSC. So like for me to travel over, play those events, I think I played lucky enough to win a regional a couple of weeks before that, which got me into the tournament of the champions. But I definitely had more relief. Like you have that relief feeling. That was after winning the World Championships. I didn't have that for winning the PBA one, the first PBA title when I won Scorpion. That was more you finally arrived, I think, and you actually feel like you belong and you're out here and you can compete and you can win. And that's a big thing. And that's probably going back to what AJ and those guys haven't done yet. But yeah, and just keep trying, don't you? You go home and try and get better and then come back. I still do that now. I mean, 10 years later, I'm still trying to get better.
Let's see. My first one was Erie. I beat Rudy on the stage. And Dusty, welcome to the show. Appreciate you being here. And so we loaded up, drove 3 hours to Toledo, ate at Joe's Crab Shack, and had practice session at 9 a.m. the next morning. I got to enjoy it for all of about 12 hours.
So Martin says, do you think Carson Hansen could do well on the PBA Tour if he played a full season? Well, Carson Hansen seems to do well on the PBA Tour without bowling a full season, so there's that. Yes, as long as I think that the hardest thing for guys to do, I think for us it was much easier when we came over. We bowled an event because you could prepare for that event. You could mentally be ready to bowl just that small event. That not small event, but what that short period of time and then go back. I think that's a much easier way to bowl on the tour than it is to be here for 8, 10, 12 weeks in a row and bowl every week. So whether Carson could adapt to that, I don't know. But I think that's the hardest part for me anyway.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's what we were programmed to do, European tour events, and then you'd go home and even bowling regionals week in, week out, and then you'd go home and you reset. But when you're on the road and you have to go from somewhere on a Saturday or Sunday and then you have practice Monday or Tuesday, you don't go home. And it's very easy, and I've had this the last couple of years, for a bad tournament to all of a sudden be 5 bad tournaments. And that's the hardest part about it. And then trying to get out of that funk and just trying to dig in and get yourself a couple of good top 10s to try and build on something. And then before you know it, that 10-week period's finished. And then you look back and go, well, that was a missed opportunity. But it's just different, and it is hard. But I think what Chris said, Carson's got quite a unique ball roll, and I think, like we said before, that's what you have to be a winner out here to start off with, I think. And then you sort of learn how to be you're already a good bowler. That's how you learn how to be a great bowler.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's got plenty of talent. So, but yeah, it's the off the lane stuff is what makes it tricky. That week 5 deal when you're doing laundry for the second time and you're hanging out with this guy and you guys were pretty good friends, but now that you're basically living together every single minute, there's a lot of people you can be around for a little while, but you don't necessarily need to be around all the while. And so doing laundry for the second time, still with a roommate, you guys are starting to get on each other's nerves a little bit. And then that guy that you used to think stunk on TV, he's got his thing. And he's drilling you every single week. and what you figure out is that everybody that's out here is really good at least one thing. So if they have their thing, you're going to have to pack your lunch to beat them on that. And
the only reason we laughed is because, that's exactly how you feel about it. And you go, a year ago, whoever it might be wasn't bowling very well, and now that you can't get anywhere near them. And then, it's not even really a thought. It's just what happens.
And then, but just look at it, if you look at the points list right now, I mean, the last 2 years, Darren Tang and Brad have bowled really, really well. Now they're really struggling. Darren bowled well just this week. He came 6th or 7th, I think. But it's just amazing how much it goes up and down like that, and how that's what's, I mean, definitely for me, how much respect I think that both of us have for Chris, that for that long period, him and Walter were kind of in the top 5, and then the other 3 guys kind of rotated around them. They were there the whole time, and people would just rotate. And he's going to be like, no, that wasn't the case. But that really was the case for such a long period. And somebody for example, Bill O'Neill has kind of taken over from that. But Bill was one of those guys who we talk about, he made a ton of shows. And then he went a pretty decent amount of time where he was a really good bowler, but he just couldn't quite, he went away from doing the one thing that he did to get better at everything. Well, then his best thing was 20% worse than what his one good thing was. but he was like 100% better at everything else. And like being able to control all of that is really difficult, I think. And now you look at Bill and he's, any tournament he turns up at, he's a factor to make the TV show.
Yeah, raised his floor and then got to where he can do what he does best enough. And the things that his B, C, D, E games are all good enough to keep up with basically whatever's going on. So
yeah.
Magna when we bowl the same tournaments, Chief. The ones out here. So I want to hear it from you. All right.
Greg Thompson asked an interesting question because it says, how does a regional player improve and have success on the national tour? Now, the easy answer for me and the asshole answer is be left-handed. What
that's success on the regional tour. That doesn't necessarily make success on the national tour.
I mean, it also depends which region as well. I mean,
so if you think about our backgrounds, bowling amateur stuff and everything, that's kind of what we did. And then you see the other guys who come in young. Simo's obviously very unique, so it's not really fair to pull his story into this. But they just come out, like even in golf, they're just ready to win. They win, and they don't even do the regional stuff. But that's not how I grew up. That's not what I could see myself doing when I was a teenager, going straight into professional tour and winning. So I think as a regional player and improve, for us, it was, it sounds horrible, but you go out there and get your face smashed in a bunch of times and you go home and practice and get better. And then you do it again and again and again. And eventually results get better. And then before you know it, well, not before you know it, it takes a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice. And that's what the three of us have done. I think that's what our stories go from that point.
Yeah. I do think the one thing, and this is what I tried to encourage Tom Clark a long time ago, is I think that we got a really big advantage from re-entry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when you found something you couldn't do, you at least got an opportunity to go back out and try and figure out a solution for it. The problem with the regional tour, in my mind anyway, as a training tool, is if I go and bowl, like I went and bowled in Fort Sill this weekend, right? Or last weekend. And I'd been the previous year, but we bowled on a completely different pattern this time. But I had basically the same issues. Well, now it was the second time, so I should have had a better solution. But being able to try things, like your memory isn't as good from one whole year as it is from, you finish a squad and an hour later you can start another one. At least if you can find the correct solution, it lets you add things. And I think that's why when we first came out on the tour, the younger European guys were a little more versatile than maybe some of the younger American players, because we weren't really fixed into that. You've got to be superstar at one thing. For us, that was really bad, because that meant that we weren't competitive like six or eight times out of 10. And you can't survive on the European tour playing like that.
Yeah.
Because the prize money isn't like top heavy. It's like you got to consistently make money. So I do feel like re-entry really helped me for sure. Somebody's got a ball question here. Casey says, probably the most asked question in the world right now. What is your comparison of the new Purple Hammer to the original Purple Hammer?
Yeah, so that is a good question. And I think a lot of guys have been asking that. Well, the logos are a little whiter, that's for sure, and it stays whiter. But I think it's really similar. It hooks more from straight away. And obviously the old one, there's talk about, Jacobs. I think I had one that once I had some oil in it, they actually got better. They don't really absorb oil, but it smoothed out the cover and it makes the ball motion smoother. I'd say with the new one, you don't have to do that. The new one hooks more already. I haven't used it a lot myself. We just bowled on 44 feet. And if you're listening earlier, I only tried it for a couple of frames when I was struggling bowling 170 game 2 of the position of the round robin. So, but the guys who've been throwing it really like it. And I'm sure towards the end of the summer tour, I'll be throwing it a lot.
So,
good.
Yeah.
Should Ryan Shafer be eligible for PBA Hall of Fame since he has the most seconds in majors but not enough titles?
It really depends, right? Here's where it really depends, right? It depends whether we're going to have the Hall of Fame like basketball or baseball, because he would be in the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
because
if the Hall is really good.
He's a Hall of Fame talent. He's just not a Hall of Fame winner.
Yeah.
Like Ryan Shafer is better than a bunch of players who are in the Hall of Fame. But part of being in the Hall of Fame in bowling is that you win the requisite amount of titles, and he hasn't. So therefore, no. That's the way I would look at it. It isn't necessarily, the Hall of Fame in bowling isn't necessarily the 100 greatest people who've ever bowled the sport. It's the 100 most successful people who've bowled the sport, or whatever the number is. That's how I look at it. So don't know whether that's fair or unfair to him, but that's just the way it is. The criteria is pretty strict. And I don't think that Ryan's complaining that that they should change it just for him. He's a historian of the game.
Yeah. Breaking news, 12 is evidently in play now. Tom Hess is the new leader. It's 12-2, not just 12-8. Yeah. 118 over. So,
what is the biggest difference between the tour now and when I was out there with you guys? Scoring pace, I think. And the fact that the third of the field are two-handers.
Yeah, I mean, rev rate is certainly is taking
rev rate,
giant
lane
lead.
surface. Rev rate, lane surface.
I was the power tweener, and now Tommy's the power tweener.
Yeah. No, like I say, but I think that it's a bit the chicken and the egg, though. Like, are the lanes easier because the scores are higher, or are the scores higher because two-handers bowl and they blow the pattern up, and bowling two-handed is a more efficient way of bowling? I don't know. I really don't know, because it's hard to say, because you can't transplant those two-handers into 1990s, early 2000s, because if you listen to a bunch of the old guys, they'd be like, you could never do that. Yeah, but nobody was actually trying to do that. So, like Robert Smith was, but I think that being a one-hander with a really high rev rate isn't the same thing as being a two-hander with a really high rev rate. It just isn't.
Yeah, your ball, EJ's the closest thing to what Robert Smith was in his era and relative to the field. But his ball hooks much earlier than two-handed balls do. So how the lanes change and break down is, environmentally, that's the biggest difference. I'm not sure. Balls have changed some. How much they absorb has changed some. The oils have, in theory, gotten a little bit slicker, but we still put as much or less oil on them now than we did 20 years ago. So, they're not able to really, the balls take over, and the power and the rev rate take over a lot of times on that oil and change it into whatever they want it to be.
I guess you missed the Masters there, Del. He says there isn't the old grind out through the oil, carry down and bone dry squads. I mean, but I don't think there would be. That's what we're kind of talking about. I don't think that with the way people attack the lanes now, that it's kind of the same thing with the grinded out squad. Urethane and really high rev rates has changed a lot the way the lane guy has to. Like, it was a lot easier for the lane guy to slow down the scoring pace before guys with 500 rev rates could just throw a urethane ball.
We tried out the bone dry squads in the US Open a couple of years ago, and it didn't go so well.
Yeah.
We pissed off that proprietor quite quickly.
Carlos says, how do you attack? Carlos is a pretty good bowler as well, so we've got to be careful here that he's not like just stealing information. How do you guys attack the lanes when they get super cliff, wet, dry? Depends. But generally, I would try and take, for me, the biggest issue I have is leaving the 2-pin when they get like that. So I try to take out that miss.
How'd you do that? I'm with Carlos. I can't bowl on house shots. I just end up missing the head pin and leaving two. Yeah,
for me, I just commit to having the miss left if that's the way that bowling center wants it. So I would use a strong asymmetrical ball,
right,
and try and keep it more in the oil, knowing that if I missed a little right, it had more chance of the ball kind of like stopping in the dry. Whereas if I take a ball that'll come off the dry in a way that's actually usable, it has no chance whatsoever of striking if I miss left. And I'm way more likely for me to miss in the oil than I am to miss too far right.
Yeah, as am I. That's why I always end up shutting it down and try and find the oil line. But the people who do really well on those house shots don't seem to do that. But they blend out the oil and the friction so much more. But I soon realised that's also why I'm good on tour, because
it makes
all the friction oil.
I mean, and it also depends at which house it is. Like for me, when I bowl in like somewhere like Plano, which is quite dry but wet dry, if that makes sense, then I have to move right and move my eyes left into the oil and just throw it straighter. But if you bowl
the hook in the front makes it tough to.
Yeah. But you bowl other places, like it can be wet dry and be dry, or wet dry and be wet.
Yeah.
So it's that's the other problem with it. It's what's really useful for this, Carlos, is going in after. Like here's a tip for you. Go in after the senior league bowls, take your dullest ball and bowl to the right for about 20 minutes, and then try and stand in the middle of the lane after the seniors have bowled, because there'll be so much carry down from their plastic balls. And in general, they'll have hit the head pin most of the time, or a large portion of the time. So it'll be super tight in the middle of the lane, and they probably won't have missed that much to the right.
I'm pretty sure if I was to go and bowl Carlos on a house shot, he'd smash my face in as well.
So, but that's how I kind of got. It's not necessarily a house shot, but even when the patterns get that way, I feel like having some experience bowling on a house shot kind of helps you.
Yeah, for sure.
On those. Dick Allen's a good person to ask about that, because Dick Allen might be the best ever at being able to control the wet dry, I think. Quit. There you go.
Stu, have you always never
Yes.
Yes,
is the
I
answer
don't
to that
know what that.
question.
You want to tell him why? I know why you don't have much of a follow through.
I don't have much of a follow through because I played Crown Green bowls. That's mainly why I don't have.
Put that in Google and see what you come up with.
So yeah, it's a touch game where you bowl. Like, yeah, it's impossible to explain, but check out bowls and then you'll see why I don't follow through.
I was very good at it, at like state level, without even picking up a bowling ball in his younger days.
So that's why it's the same reason why Walter Ray does the way he does, because he played horseshoes.
I like how we can compare you to Walter Ray.
Yeah.
Actually, we didn't. You did.
Two sport athletes.
You did.
Is lofting over the left gutter just becoming part of the sport, depending on pattern rev rate? Well,
yes.
Since I've been making money, I made most of my money before 1995 lofting the left gutter. So it's not exactly just becoming part of it.
Chris, there's an absolutely phenomenal question here that I want Dom to answer honestly. Dom, what was your arsenal for the last tourney?
I walked in with 20 balls. I think we covered this earlier. And I like the ball reaction I saw with the Hammer Obsession. For a bigger bowling ball, I actually don't think it's as big as some of the other ones. There's like a Brunswick Prism or anything like that.
So by bigger, you mean like early?
Big core, big cover.
Yeah.
And ASIM, usually. It's not symmetric when I say about big ball. So, yeah, like the Brunswick Prism, the Prism ball, they're so strong that they get really early. They come out of the box with a lot of surface. Even if I take them up, I can't really go too far left with them, even with a lot of oil, because they just want to do everything so early. So the angles I'm trying to play, that doesn't really work. But with the Obsession, the big Hammer Obsession, not the Obsession Tour, that one to me does push up the lane a little bit further for an ASIM, and that's kind of what I want to see for the most part when I have my feet left, because I want to see the ball go through the pins and I want to see angle into the pins. And I've always had my ball reaction, and what I like to see has always been from the pins backwards. So I see my ball go through the pins, I see the angle I can create from the end of the pattern and my break point, or whatever you want to say, and I bring it back towards me if I can. And that ball allowed me to. So I did have 5 Obsessions in my bag for the last event. One of them I drew 2 week and didn't do a lot, but the other 4, the best one, my favorite one layout was 60 by 5.5 by 30. So that puts it above 2 inches above my fingers of my bridge. And that really makes it the core imbalanced. so I can create a lot of different shapes and get to see my ball go through the pins the way I want it to.
So you pretty much only use that ball, didn't you? Not that one, but I mean the Obsession.
Yeah, I had a pin down one. Again, it's like basically 5 inches. I had the weaker one as well. I had 5. Actually, it was 6 inches at 15 degrees. So that was really up there. That was only if I needed push in the middle for that ball, but it had to be quite tight, and the fronts could be chewed up, but it still needed some push. And then, yeah, I had a stronger one that was like 4.5 as well. So, like what we covered earlier, I find it a lot easier to change balls within that ball. So I kind of, the success I've had in recent history or history before has always been changing ball but staying with the same one. So even when I won the US Open, I had hammer webs with different layouts, and that makes everything really simple for me rather than picking another ball, picking another core. And that does happen too. Look, I did throw the Command Solids over the weekend, and that went quite well. That was my big ball, so to speak. And then obviously there was Purple Hammers
hanging around
just in case. And Michael Tang decided that.
Carl Buckley says, just right here, he says, he's talking about you on the house shot. Says Damu Bowl 10-10 for 4 at the Dunstable blind doubles. So there you go.
I've always struck a lot in that bowling centre. When I was a kid, I won junior events there when it first opened. And the following week they put down a sport pattern and I bowled 300 as well. So after 170.
Should you consider it? I'm sure you can help a lot of us out there still. One of the best guys in the business, taught me a ton about how to play on tour. I'm going to answer one last question before I go and sign off and get ready. But don't you think early in the 2000s, the patterns started out flatter and the surfaces were newer? Yeah, Stu and I talk about this a lot, that there hasn't really been any new surfaces in a while. And so we're starting, it goes back to what Sean asked about loft and the track looks almost everywhere because all the surfaces are now 10, 15, 20 years old. And so there's a place to throw it to. And so as the pattern gets flatter, guys just move further left with more rev rate. And so, yeah, I think that's a lot of reason why you can move left along with that rev rate. And the fact that we haven't really, in my opinion, and disagreed with by people that are smarter at it than me, but I just don't think we put enough oil in the lane to stop the balls from being able to throw, stand left and get 20 feet of back end every time. So.
Okay, so we've got one person on here who's more famous than we are. Rowdy John is a professional darts player. He's a Vienna bowler. He's cheered us on over the times.
He had history.
Yeah, I know.
He was a little younger
since he was about this big. But anyway, he plays on the PDC dart circuit, and he said, "Would you rather have less tournaments with more prize money, or keep it where there's more tournaments?" Of course, it's easy to say just more prize money. I think that we would, in a lot of ways, I think that it depends on how many is less. Like, if we could have the World Series play, once or twice a quarter as a deal, rather than bowling every single week, then yes, that's what I would prefer. But playing 5 tournaments at the start of the year and then basically playing nothing for the rest of the year is not something that I want to do.
So if we go back before COVID, I guess, as well, I don't know if it's fair. I know the US Open's moved.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you won in 2018, we had the US Open straight after it. That was a bit more balanced season. There was PBA League sort of sprinkled in there. There was a summer tour. The majors, majority of the majors was still at the beginning of the year, but it did feel like we were bowling a lot more than we're bowling now. And maybe we need to get through this year too and see what happens next year.
I think
the players committee
spread it out a little bit more, hopefully.
Yeah.
But,
playing all the majors in 5 weeks isn't. I don't think anybody's necessarily a huge fan of that,
including them.
Yeah,
the powers that be. That's not. It's just it was a necessary evil this past year. So
yeah.
I need to sign off. I'm going to leave it to you guys.
No, we're good. We can we can wrap it up.
Okay.
Well, bow well today, Chris. We'll be watching.
Thank you. Well, on that note, anything else you guys have?
No, we're just excited to get down to the Lucy. Definitely going to be a challenging 44-foot pattern. I think that Kerry Mogard has had a little bit of his fingers in the pie on that one, and he's a little bit of a sadist, I think. So I think that they're going to be fairly challenging. So we will see. I've had a little practice on it. I think we're going to try and get it laid out today over at the Voln Center we're at, up at Mel's. So yeah, I don't anticipate a huge scoring pace next week. And also, it's going to be a little more challenging because half the people, whichever person of the doubles you are, half the people you don't usually bowl with. So the breakdown is going to be a little bit more different, I would say.
True.
So.
All right. Well,
all right.
Support those small businesses and bowling centers out there and help them get through this. And when you get a chance, please support the sponsors that support us: Storm, Rotogrip, Niner Global, Vice, Turbo, Coolwick, 3G Shoes, Master, Bowler Smart, Mark Baker Bowling, Fire Lake Bowling Center, and Lightning Strikes. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. God bless.
See you later.